Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Angel here, and I'm going to do my review of Star Trek A Final Unity, following my Let's Play of it, which, to be fair, was at least a month ago now since I finished that. I just haven't had much time to, do the review of it. Now, I was going to write a script. In fact, I got quite a way through writing a basically review script of the game, but I was kind of having trouble finishing it off, and it was getting quite long and maybe just a bit dry, and I thought maybe instead I would just kind of freeform it. I've got some notes in front of me. I will go through these notes and try and hopefully make some kind of intelligent remarks and observations and thoughts about this lovely little game. I'm going to preface this by saying I absolutely adore Star Trek, at least classic Star Trek up to the Enterprise era. I don't really care too much for the modern Star Trek, with an exception being for Strange New Worlds. I do like Strange New Worlds, and Lower Decks is passable, but I don't care for the rest. This has a lot of nostalgic value for me as well, because this was the first game I ever owned on a CD-ROM. I bought I think it was a 2-speed CD-ROM, and I bought this game with it. And when I say I bought, I mean my parents bought it for me. Because this game came out in 95, I was 14 years old, I think, at the time. So yeah, a lot of nostalgic value. And TNG is basically my favourite Trek, along with Deep Space Nine. So yeah, I very much wanted to play this game. I'm not really into adventure games. I have basically played this, Deep Space Nine Harbinger, the 25th anniversary games, and Monkey Island 2. That's pretty much my experience with adventure games. Oh, there was Leisure Suit Larry as well, but my dad refused to let me play that properly because it was too, air quotes, adult. So yeah, other than that, I'm not really big on adventure games, and I was frankly never very good at them, at least not when I was a kid. I don't remember completing Monkey Island 2. I did buy the remaster of that, and I got some of the way through, and I kind of got bored. So there we go. So yeah, A Final Unity. My overall thoughts, I really enjoyed it. It has flaws. I think, speaking as a Star Trek fan, you absolutely have to play this game, because it basically feels like you're playing an episode or several episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation, with all the voice cast, Patrick Stewart, Jonathan Frakes, so forth. And there's clearly a lot of love went into this game, because there's so much great attention to detail on the lore, the way the character animations are done. Yeah, it's great. I love that. I like a bit of consistency in my Star Trek. So, very good. Very, very good. However, if you are not a Star Trek fan, and you're just coming into this as an adventure gamer, I don't honestly know how well this would play for you. I mean, I think it's probably an average game, as adventure games go. It's not particularly hard. I would say probably the hardest it gets is towards the end, where you have several options in how to proceed. There's nowhere near as many kind of instant death fail points that you might find in older school adventure games, where you go over a pit and you instantly die or something like that. I guess, was it Space Quest, along those kind of lines. But there is some degree of, you have to find objects and use objects for certain things, walk to, look to, and that sort of thing. But this game also combines that kind of basic adventure gaming along with another aspect, and you basically get starship combat as well, which I will get to. So first up, the story. I thought it was a quite enjoyable story, but it does rely very heavily on coincidence in order to get you from A to B to C. I think a big example of this is Marassia. I will talk about Marassia a bit more in a bit, but I hated this planet. I really did. It's the worst aspect of the game. It really drags here, but the only point of Marassia seemed to be to get you to the next planet, which is Frigis, because you learn of a species of animal which only comes from Garid, which are the people you basically encounter at the very start of the game. And it leads you to this lost Garidian colony, which just happens to have ancient Chodak ruins, and just, happen to know the guy who can give you a special Chodak device, which you will later absolutely need in order to go to the Chodak. I don't think it's their homeworld, it's like their central bureaucracy planet or whatever. So yeah, there's other aspects where the game really has several coincidences happen to get you from there to be. I mean, it's not too bad in game, but I'd say Marassia is the most egregious example of this. I wish Marassia didn't exist. I really do. The fifth scroll is the other sort of major aspect of possible coincidence here, because the game basically sets you on the quest to find the fifth scroll, and that in turn keeps leading you to these Chodak ruins, or references to the Chodak, and the Chodak are obviously the big overarching story arc of the game. It's called a Final Unity. You end up finding the Unity device, which was designed by the Chodak, and I did mention in my Let's Play the whole fifth scroll quest line has serious problems with the Prime Directive. One thing I do like though is that you don't have to necessarily find it. I mean, okay, you do have to go and find it, but once you find it, you basically, if you do it wrong, you end up destroying the scroll, and so therefore, you don't end up causing massive societal change on Garrod, which causes an internal revolution where the people who are doing the revolution sound just as bad and start executing people who disagree with them. I'm not going to go over my thoughts on the whole Prime Directive thing in detail again, but suffice to say that the Federation should not be getting themselves involved in this. This massively impacts the internal affairs of the government of Garrod. Now, you could argue that it would be advantageous to have them be more friendly to the Federation, since they are basically allies of the Romulans and apparently use Romulan technology like Romulan warbirds, so, that would be useful, but yeah, I don't think the Romulans are going to be very happy with that either. So, political quagmire on top of just basically violating the fundamental rules of the Federation's non-interference policy. Whatever you think of the Prime Directive, good or bad, it is an established thing, and yeah, I don't think they should have gone along with it. You could go along with it for just purely archaeological reasons, but, Picard would certainly recognise that this has massive implications if you do find it, not just within Garrod society, but possibly for the larger implications of Federation-Romulan relations. So yeah. Overall, though, I mean, the fifth scroll only takes up basically half of the game. And once you find it, the game shifts pace, and it comes to a Romulan invasion, and then subsequently a Chodak invasion. Then you find the Chodak homeworld, or bureaucracy planet, and then the Unity device. I will say I think the game's a little short. It was a bit shorter than I remember. It'd have been nice to go to a few more locations. I mean, I guess there's only so much you can kind of fit into the game, and there's already a huge amount of voice acting, branching voice acting as well, since every character had to be voiced, because you can take every single main character down with you and every single one will be voiced, and so there's a lot of variation there. But it's ultimately a pretty short game. I think the coincidences would have been a little less heavy if there were other sort of side planets or things for you to do, but I'm going to come to that in a moment. So the gameplay itself is mostly the away missions. You select your main cast members to take down. Who you choose does have a big impact on how well you will do in the mission. I'll take, for example, the very first one, Merton's orbital station. If you do not take Geordie LaForge with you, you will not be able to save the station, because apparently only he has the engineering knowledge to help Dr. Grimes, I want to say, in stabilising the station's reactor core, thus saving it from destruction. I don't know why Data couldn't do this, because Data is also pretty proficient in engineering and theories, so whatever. But yeah, that's an example of, how having the right characters with you affects the outcome of a mission. Now, I've already said that there aren't as many, binary fail states in this game. It's that you can fail some things, but it merely just affects the overall performance of the mission. This is an aspect that you get in the 25th anniversary games, which I'm assuming this is probably what this is kind of based on. You could always contact Starfleet to get a report on how well you did, basically, and they'll basically say, yeah, good job, but maybe not so good a job because you did this, or yeah, you were shit. Overall binary fail points where you die or you just end up failing the game, it's pretty rare, I think. And most cases where I allowed myself to be shot or engaged in combat, you don't die, you just end up being beamed back up to the ship and being resuscitated, or you just wait like a minute or so in game and the person wakes up again. I think this contributes to making the game a lot easier than other would-be adventure games. The only thing I'll say is that I don't know why they bothered adding these 2 extra random characters. I think it's Butler and Karlstrom. They serve no real purpose as far as I can tell. There's only one mission where you're forced to take a certain 4 characters with you, and that's when you arrive at the Unity device, and you're only there for like 2 rooms basically, and then you don't have them anymore. I guess it was for variety, but I honestly don't see the point in adding them. I don't think they really bring anything to the missions per se. I know at least if you have the difficulty lowered, it automatically chooses the crew members for you. There's at least one mission where it puts one of these randoms onto you to your landing party. So I don't know if that really had any major impact, but I don't think so. Certainly not in my experience. But I do like the aspect that you can choose if you want to. So there's that, although it takes a little bit too long to actually get to the whole beam down process. It just takes a bit of time. The away missions themselves, you got the basic look, move, take, use kind of options. You'll pick up objects along the way. You tend to have standard equipment with you, like a phaser, tricorder, medical tricorder, medipack, that sort of thing. But honestly, you don't actually have to do awful lot of interacting with objects to use with other objects. 25th Anniversary does this a lot more, where you have to basically get a bunch of objects and then maybe combine those objects together. 25th Anniversary, as I recall, is a lot more puzzle-based than this game. This game is not so much. And that's a kind of a shame. I wish there'd been a bit more involvement in that kind of thing. They do try it to some degree, but again, it's not really that complex. I think actually Marassia is probably one of the bigger examples of where they try and get you to do various aspects, but it just turns out being such a boring chore. Because you end up having to get these containers, you have to go to take samples and then extract the samples themselves into separate containers and go and scan every single one on one table, then scan every single thing on another table. Oh, it's so dull. It's ridiculously dull. And yeah, and all in the background of an annoying electrical sound effect, which I will get to as well. I think the most interesting planet was Alanor. There was a lot more rooms here, I think, than the others. There was quite a different variety of ways you can actually go through that planet. I think there's at least 3, possibly 4 potential ways to do it. And I kind of categorize this based on easy, medium, or difficult, hard ways to do it. So you can basically, once you meet the Chodak, you can basically say, well, yeah, you can guide us, and they kind of bypass the defenses that you would normally have to go through. They help transport you. You can engage in combat with the Chodak, and they'll just completely overpower you, knock you out, and you just get a black screen, and they just go, again, bypasses absolutely everything. You don't have to walk through anything. It's much quicker. And then you can just go through the whole thing yourself without the Chodak, which means you have to do some trial and error with a transporter, bypass some defenses yourself, before you get to basically where the computer that you're after. And I wish that had been in the game a bit more, having a bit more branching narrative storylines if possible. I mean, as I said, you do have it, for example, with the 5th scroll, but all that really does is just kind of affect how the story treats certain things with regards to the situation on Garrett. It doesn't really affect anything else. The people of Frigis will still help you even if you lose the 5th scroll, because they don't particularly care, because they've got their own interpretations of the 5th scroll. It would cause their own problems there, so they're like, yeah, whatever. They'll still help you. So it doesn't have any impact, is what I'm trying to say. The final level itself within the Unity device is pretty cool. I love the artwork here, some of the sound effects, it's great stuff. Overall, I find the Chodak race themselves to be quite a fascinating one. I think they're a great addition to Star Trek lore, except they're not canon. Because, the games aren't canon. I think the Chodak show up in maybe 2 or 3 other games. I know they are a factor in Birth of the Federation, and I think they're in at least one of them, possibly one of the shooter games, or one of the other kind of space combat games. But yeah, I really love the Chodak. I love their design. They're quite suitably alien. It's nice to have this kind of ancient race, but actually be a relevant race. And it's just a shame they're not really canon, because I think that would have really shifted the political dynamics of the Star Trek world, particularly as they seem to be bordering on Romulan space, at least the other side of Romulan space. So yeah, very interesting. I wish we would have seen more of them. Another place where you'll spend generally a fair bit of time is the bridge. There's not really actually a lot to do here. It's mostly just characters talking. but you will obviously have the options to go to various parts of the ship, such as tactical, engineering, the computer library, or astrogation. Now I want to talk about the astrogation bit for a bit, because I mentioned in my Let's Play that I wondered what happened here, because there is a huge number of star systems that you can visit. I mean, we're talking hundreds, possibly, I think, based on what I can see from the number of dots. I didn't count them all, obviously. But you can visit any one of those dots, and at each one of those dots is a star system where you can visit multiple planets, moons of planets, or even the subspace anomalies that can kill you. And that's great, but it's also bad because there's literally nothing to do there. There's 2 star bases you can visit in the game, and all that does is play a cutscene and automatically repairs and rearms your ship. There's no other real purpose to them, but it is nice that you can do that. But yeah, it makes me wonder if there was meant to be something bigger to the game, like possible side missions or more random encounters. I should say there are random encounters. If you fly off into Romulan space, for example, you will be engaged by Romulan warbirds. I know that you can be engaged by a Ferengi marauder. That's never happened to me in either when I was a kid or in my current playthrough. It's weird that happens, but you know, I know the Ferengi used to be the big bad, but that was season 1, and this takes place in season 7 of TNG when the Ferengi are a joke. So, but yeah, apart from those occasional random encounters, there's nothing to do, and that's a shame. That's a real shame. I'm guessing either time or technical limitations prevented that from being bigger than it was. I did try to reach out to a few of the developers. I did get a response back from one. He said, please submit your questions, but it may be some time before I get back to you. That was 2+ months ago, and I've never heard back from him since, which, it's a shame. I had hoped he would respond to my questions so I could at least get some feedback on why things were the way they were. So, we'll never know, I guess. But if, however, he does ever come back to me, I'll maybe do a quick update video on that, because I think it's worth knowing the developments of these games, the background behind the scenes. I mean, I know this isn't a particularly big game or popular game or anything, but, Star Trek fans in particular, I think it'd be worth knowing. So, ship combat. Yeah. This should be cool, but it's not. I do remember liking it as a kid, but as an adult, it's a frustrating experience. There are good elements here. There's, you got lots of evasive maneuvers. There's clearly elements of like what will be Starfleet and Klingon Academy and Bridge Commander, where the orientation of your ship matters for the phasers that you can fire and torpedoes. You have a limited number of torpedoes, so you do kind of have to be conservative if you're in a larger fight, because if you run out of torpedoes, you're kind of fucked. Because phasers alone generally not that good enough to destroy a larger ship. But the AI is terrible. It just kind of keeps doing this wobbly Parkinson's kind of look, and you do need to lower the CPU cycles in using Dropbox, otherwise it just plays way too fast, and it's uncontrollable. You can fly the ship manually yourself, and that's what I tended to do, but like I said, you got the evasive maneuvers as well, and you can just let Worf take command himself, and as I said, the AI's crap, so it's kind of hit or miss whether Worf will actually do his job, just like TNG in general. So I guess that's canon, and that's accurate to canon. Well done, guys. The other aspect is the engineering side, which I really like. It's really detailed. You've got various subsystems that you can assign power to, and it matters if your ship's damaged. If the ship gets damaged, you can set repair times, and there's limits to the amount of energy you can have, and it's great, except it's not really that useful. When you're actually in combat, if you switch to the engineering side of things, although Worf will take over combat, the combat's still going on whilst you're kind of staring at these screens fiddling with your energy management, by which time you could be easily blown up. The best thing you could possibly do perhaps is just kind of set this up beforehand if you know you're going into battle, but even then I just found I didn't need to use it at all. And I was playing on hard difficulty as well. It just wasn't necessary. I really like it. I like the visualization. I think the UI here is pretty cool, but ultimately didn't need it. And that's a shame. So, the visual audio side of things, the game looks pretty good, even for today's standards. I love the artwork in this game. The Chodak stuff, as I've already mentioned, I love the way the Chodak are depicted. They got some great imagination, how the Unity device looks and their worlds. There's some great audio design, I think. This kind of background ambience when you're on Chodak-based worlds, with the exception of Frigis. And yeah, there's a lot of variety, a lot of vibrant colours here and there, and Also, the character models, the character animations, I mean, it's pixel art, so it's not amazing, but they went so much attention to detail on the character animations, because you might know that a lot of characters have their own little tics on the show. For example, Picard has the Picard maneuver, he tugs his shirt down. LaForge, he clasps his hands in front of him a lot of the time. Data has a sort of more rigid pose to him, and it's all there. And that's great. That's such a nice little attention to detail, and I really appreciate that. And it just proves to me that the designers of this game were big Star Trek fans, and they loved it. So yeah, kudos to them for doing that. However, although I praise some of the audio design, in other aspects it was terrible. Particularly, again, Marassia. I've already stressed I didn't like Marassia. I'm going to stress again, I fucking hated Marassia. It was a terrible planet. It was boring, I didn't care for the zoology side of things, and it had terrible audio. Not only once, but in 2 different areas, you have this basically repeatingly annoying sound. The first one is when you first beam down, you have this bird, which just keeps going every few seconds. It's highly irritating. But what's more irritating is Dr. Hunforsh's lab, where you will spend probably about half the mission doing these boring analyses, and you've got this kind of electrical going on over and over again every 2 seconds, constantly, and it just drives me up the wall. And you're supposed to have conversations with various people as you're doing this kind of investigation into the disappearance of Hunforsh, with this sound effect going over and over and over again. It's terrible. I hate it. And I just wanted to get off that planet as soon as possible, along with the fact that it was just terribly boring. The bridge is wonderfully modelled. Again, you got little character tics. Picard sort of looking around or doing a quick shirt tug. But otherwise, nothing really happens on the bridge, other than, as I said before, just dialogue moments for the most part. There's the conference room, which will basically only have the Garidian passengers, and then it's just never used again. And then you can also access the holodeck, which is basically just a means to view the cutscenes of the game that you've unlocked so far. There is also the computer library section, which just basically has a bunch of lore and occasionally some analyses as you go through your away missions. And that's just basically lots of text reading. It's nice flavour if you like it, but I tended to skip it in this particular playthrough. One thing I did notice was the con position is obscured by Picard standing in front of it, because there's no one sitting there. They obviously didn't know or have a character that they wanted to put in the con position for the game. And I think at this point in the series there was no regular con person, because Ro Laren had already left, and obviously Wesley Crusher had already left, so there was no one that they could put there. And it's also a shame that there's no one in the background behind Worf at the science or engineering stations. That could have been a nice little bit of flavour, but as it stands, you just have Worf, Riker, Troy, Data, and Picard. The ship combat visuals itself is very blocky, but for the time, it is what it is. It's not too terrible. Again, as a kid, I just remember it being better than it was, and today it doesn't look good at all. And I guess the final thing to comment on is the CGI cut scenes. The exterior ship CGI is actually still pretty good. I think it holds up very well by today's standards, even if it's low resolution. The couple of scenes where you get the character models, that's not so good, but I understand for the time it was top notch, and it was really good for the time, but it has not aged well, in my opinion. But it is what it is. It's a product of its time, so I'm not going to be too harsh or judgmental in that aspect of things. So that's it. I think that's all I've got to really say about this game. I enjoyed it. I might have complained a lot. It sounds like I complained a lot when I did this, but no, I still like this game. I still enjoy it. I probably would play it again sometime, because it's Star Trek. I'm comfortable in the presence of these characters that I really like and enjoy. It's TNG, and as I said, it just feels like you're playing an extended episode or a series of episodes of TNG, and what's not to like about that? So yeah, I highly recommend it to any Star Trek fan. As an average adventure game, it's meh at best, probably. I think if you're really going to get any serious enjoyment out of the game, it's being a Star Trek fan. That's my honest opinion of it. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope it wasn't too rambling. I've never done game reviews before, so it's up to you whether you think this free-form format works or not. I thought it would work better than just reading off a script that would just end up sounding a bit too dry. So yeah, I'm seeing how this goes. If it's terrible, just tell me, or dislike, whatever. Otherwise, I do intend to do more Let's Plays. As I've said, I want to do DS9 Harbinger next, but I just haven't had the time lately, and also I'm not really in a good position to do a lot of voice recording currently, as I'm basically in my living room and I have a family, and it's very rare that I actually get some time to myself to do some voice recording, as I've done today. I will be moving house in September, and so I will finally have my own room for doing kind of recordings like this in peace. So I will probably do the DS9 playthrough in September. So yeah, thank you for joining me. Hope you'll join me next time, and obviously also keep track of what we're up to with the TIE Fighter Total Conversion project. I have more videos on that in the future as well. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you and take care.